Good evening, St. Louis. Welcome to the special Comptroller Candidate Forum hosted by iHeart. Today, we're joined by candidates Darlene Green and Donna Behringer, running to become St. Louis's next Chief Fiscal Officer, the City Comptroller. This office plays a critical role in managing city finances, overseeing spending, protecting credit, and approving contracts. We'll be asking questions based on the city charter, current issues, and long-term fiscal plans. Let's begin. So candidates, please be brief. You'll have 30 seconds to give your introductions. First, we'll have candidate Darlene Green, and then next we will have Donna Behringer. First, we'll go ahead and start with you, Ms. Green.
Thank you and good evening. I had the pleasure of becoming appointed to the Comptroller's office in 1995. I am grateful to have served with a breadth of experience and knowledge to serve in that office, and I believe that the citizens right now have a choice to make. They have a choice to make between experience and politics. This is about get out the vote at this point. This is St. Louis, and we want to encourage each and every voter to make a choice on who they want to see run the city's $1 billion budget, annual budget. That's an important decision for all St. Louisans to consider. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Next, we will have Ms. Donna Behringer. You have 30 seconds to give your introduction. You may start.
Thank you. I'm Donna Behringer, and I was an alderman for almost 14 years. Of those 14 years, I served 8 years on balancing the budget for the city of St. Louis. I received the nickname Fiscal Hawk, and then I went up to Jefferson City, became a state rep for 8 years. And while up there, I became also known as Fiscal Hawk because I was the ranking minority chair of the Fiscal Review Committee for the state of Missouri. I had to review every House and Senate bill and make sure that fiscal note matched what they were trying to tell. I do have an undergrad in business. I have a master's degree in communications. I started out in community development in the city of St. Louis. I'd never planned to run for office, but because of all the things I accomplished working in the nonprofit that I was working in, I was encouraged to run. So I tell people I started at the basic roots of being active in my neighborhood association, and then running a nonprofit development, and then going on and being a part of the city budget, state budget. And now I want to come back to the city of St. Louis and use that skill set to help see us forward in the future of the city of St. Louis.
Thank you, Donna. Next, we move to our next portion where I'll ask you'll have 90 seconds to answer these questions. First, we will start with Ms. Green. As the city's chief fiscal officer, how will you ensure transparency, accountability, and independence in managing St. Louis's finances?
St. Louis's elected comptroller is the independent voice of city government in the executive branch, serving as the chief fiscal officer, as its accountant, as its auditor. It has a voice at the Board of Aldermen, and it has been a great experience to make the decisions intentional to improve the office, as well as to carry on those fiscal decisions that have to be made on behalf of improving our city overall, neighborhood by neighborhood. You need to have safe neighborhoods. You need to have neighborhoods where people want to live and feel safe. And you got to have the opportunity to deliver city services. And all those kinds of things cost. It takes money. As your comptroller, I have built a strong fiscal foundation with reserves of $151 million in our reserves. And I took and transformed that office from a triple B credit to a double A credit. So we have a strong fiscal foundation of which to begin the next term.
Thank you. Next, we will have Ms. Donna Behringer. As the city's chief fiscal officer, how will you ensure transparency, accountability, and independence in managing St. Louis's finances?
Well, transparency and accountability starts with good policies and procedures. Independence of oversight of the public funds can be achieved through a proper segregation of duties and reliable accounting software. But I tell people it starts with the actual comptroller's office, setting the tone and being the example. And the most important part is that the comptroller's office makes sure that they put what they're doing out there into the public by, if they're interviewed or people want to talk to them, they'll let them know that they will have a dashboard on their website that's updated that'll allow people to see all areas that the comptroller's office oversees. And then, of course, I want to make sure that going forward on E&A meetings, that the comptroller also wants people to know what is being voted on when they vote in those meetings.
Thank you. Donna, the comptroller is one of 3 voting members on the Board of Estimate and Appointment. How would you maintain financial independence while still collaborating with the mayor and board president?
Well, the Board of E&A votes on many different topics, but they're all with fiscal notes. And what I tell people is that before I would ever go to have an opinion and work with what was going to be voted on, I would do my homework and I would make sure that I saw all areas of what's being asked of me, especially those variables that you don't know about. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is that I keep what is the most important thing in mind, which is this is the taxpayers' money. Is this in the best interest of the taxpayers? Will this help the city of St. Louis? Will it move it forward? But I'm always open to working with anyone, and I'm always about being fair and working towards a compromise if we can't come to a decision. But I wouldn't automatically end something. I would abstain from voting if I was not comfortable with it, and I would make sure that the residents of the city of St. Louis were also aware of if I had questions about it or concerns, and I would make those known.
Thank you. Ms. Darlene, the comptroller is one of the 3 voting members on the Board of Estimate and Appointment. How would you maintain financial independence while still collaborating with the mayor and board president?
Well, as the independent voice, I first think about the residents and the businesses of the city. I want to make sure that whatever we're voting on is in the best interest of the city. So I have a pretty focused lens when I'm voting on an issue at E&A. And so if there are issues with any item that we have, I would bring it up and make sure that the other 2 members are aware of it. Usually that's done prior to the meeting. And sometimes if they haven't been convinced, then there's more discussion that has to happen during the meeting in order to make the point, because the point has to be made that these issues must be in the best interest of the people. They must be fiscally responsible. They also need to follow the law. You cannot pass contracts unless they are legal. You cannot overlook best practices. And so you have to make sure that you're making a very educated choice, one that is fiscally responsible, one that is accountable, it shows accountability and transparency, and of course being in the best interest of the people that we serve. After all, it's taxpayers' dollars that we are governing, and we want to make sure that we have the right information in order to make the right decision. And I've often had to have a lot of courage to make decisions that are perhaps different from my 2 counterparts. But in the end, it makes a difference that I'm making that decision to protect taxpayers' dollars and to make sure it's within the best interest of the taxpayers.
Thank you. Ms. Green, with a recent $42 million surplus, what are your top priorities for allocating those funds? Reserves, pensions, investments, or direct reinvestment?
Well, by law and practice of the city, all surpluses are divided in half. Half go into reserve. That's an intentional practice that we have in order that we are continuing to fund our reserves, and the other half goes into the capital budget, which is also an intentional practice where we fund our capital budget. So we have right now, the reserves I spoke of earlier, the rainy day fund is $151 million. The capital fund happens to be roughly a little over $100 million. And so we have the funds to do a lot of infrastructure work in our city, to pave our streets, but we also have ARPA funds and balances that are going to take care of some of those expenditures as well. So in the future, we've got the funds to deliver city services in short.
Thank you. Ms. Behringer, with a recent $42 million surplus, what are your top priorities for allocating those funds? Reserves, pensions, investments, or direct reinvestment?
Well, first, I would like to know how the budget surplus was derived. That's the most important thing, and I don't have that answer right now. So I do know that I would want to make sure I have an accurate number and that money could be used for anything else. I do know that we have to be careful and be good stewards of the pension, because we have to make sure to review the valuation to assure appropriate assumptions. But people need to know that benefits are not a promise, it's a contract, and we need to do the best we can to provide these benefits because it's part of the contract. So I look forward to trying to see that this is insured and we're continuing to contribute to our long-term obligations.
All right, Ms. Behringer, can you tell me, if you are elected, you're responsible for signing off on contracts and expenditures. What would cause you to pause or refuse to sign, or how would you communicate that to the public?
Well, when it comes to contracts and signing off on them, you definitely need to be able to know what's in the contract, make sure that contract has deliverables so we know that that would be something that the city needs. Would there be anything else, these services that would be needed to do that contract? And then I would say to myself, okay, did we make sure there are no conflicts of interest? Have we done our due diligence? A lot of time when you just see a contract, you may just see a company listed, but is that a subcontract? Do they subcontract that work out? Who do they subcontract it out to? Is it an LLC? Who is in that LLC? And so that is how we're going to find the conflicts of interest. It's also how we're going to ensure that they are a viable company that can perform and take care of the contract as needed. But at the end of the day, it's following a very clear procedure that is set up and used uniformly throughout the city and the departments.
Thank you. Ms. Green, you are responsible for signing off on contracts and expenditures. What would cause you to pause or refuse to sign, or how would you communicate that to the public?
Contracts do follow a process, and before I sign contracts, they must go through a process where they're going to the legal department and they're going to be reviewed as to form and have to pass muster before they come to my office. And once they are there and have been cleared through the legal department, then we're looking for some accounting issues that may be there. For example, some contracts, they want to charge taxes. We are a government, so we don't pay the taxes and so forth and so on, where we are scrutinizing the contract for areas that might have been missed by the legal department. We do the checks for payment of taxes city taxes. If they're not paid, then we send those contracts back so that that vendor would be able to pay their taxes. And so there are other kinds of processes we put them through. And if we find that we cannot sign that or co-sign that contract, then we try to ask those questions necessary as to how did it get past all of the other departments, how did it get past legal, and to get to the comptroller's office. Because once it gets to the comptroller's office, it should be pretty final.
Welcome back. I'm Taylor Harris from Fox 2 News, and in this segment, we'll cover today's financial challenges and long-term opportunities. Let's start with the current issues and then move into the big ticket funding. You will have 90 seconds to answer the question. First, we will start off with Ms. Green. What untapped or underused revenue streams would you pursue to stabilize and grow St. Louis's budget?
That's a good question. Unused, stable.
Yes.
Well, I'm gonna tell you, right? I would love for us to grow our tax base, and when you look at the percentages of revenues that come in, property taxes are roughly about 12% right now. When I started back in 1995, that was about 9 to 10%. So we've had a little bit of growth over the years, but I would like to make sure that we can attract more businesses that are tax-paying businesses, and that we can attract more home owners to grow that part of the revenues, grow the property tax base. That certainly is going to go a long way to get us to be less dependent on earnings tax, sales tax, and of course we don't want to go and raise taxes, sales tax on our taxpayers or anything like that. So that's a great way to look at how do we go and tap into increasing revenues, and that is to increase homeownership, attract the businesses, and not only will it help the city, it would also help our public schools to have a higher property tax base in our city of St. Louis. Currently, our neighboring cities in the county, their property tax base is much higher than ours, and we want to increase ours.
Thank you. Ms. Behringer, what untapped or underused revenue streams would you pursue to stabilize and grow St. Louis's budget?
Well, I would have to say, I don't think we have any untapped or underutilized. What I would say is that we need to be looking to the future about what we don't have and how we're going to get through the next rough times coming up. We've had the ARPA funds for quite a long time now. So most of the people on the Board of Aldermen were not here back before ARPA funds, when the city of St. Louis would just get excited if the Cardinals went into the playoffs, because that meant we raised more money to buy a trash truck. So what we need to be looking at is, what should we do to increase the revenues? And the one way to increase revenues is to actually increase more people in the St. Louis city who are visiting from over 80 miles around. And that's why it's important to have an area in the city of St. Louis that people want to come visit. Because when you have heads in beds, basically you have people in the hotels, you have people in the restaurants, you have people going to concerts, that is generating money for the city of St. Louis. It's from outside of the city of St. Louis. And that's the key, finding money from outside to come in. I would also say that during my door knocking, I was happy to see that we've got some new housing coming into areas, and more housing means there's more people that will be paying the real estate tax, rather than having more people pay a higher real estate tax with what we have. So increased housing is another avenue that would help us as well.
Thank you. Ms. Behringer, how would you assess and improve the city's internal financial controls in light of past mismanagement?
I would make sure that we were doing correct accounting processes. I'd make sure that we had the right technology in place to be able to monitor everything that we do. However, I think what's also important there is that we have staff, and we have the staffing that can oversee what needs to be overseen. And that's because the comptroller's office is actually oversees travel. They oversee the municipal garages where you have the cars that are used by city employees. So we have many ways that we can oversee, but I don't feel that the staff is there at this time. And that would be something I would be looking at to make sure that we have what we need to actually do that.
Ms. Green, how would you assess and improve the city's internal financial controls in light of past mismanagement?
Well, one of the things we do need is to hire staff. We need to pay competitive wages. We are down significantly in our city in terms of staffing, so we need to staff up. And that's a great concern that I have had. As well as others who are leaders in the city of St. Louis. We've got to staff up not only the Comptroller's office, but all the departments that are understaffed. And so when you have understaffed, you have overworked staff. There are people in my office that are overworked, as well as in other offices that serve the citizens of this city. So we have to attract qualified staff with competitive salaries. And then we, from my standpoint as the Comptroller, who's the auditor of the city, continue to audit, perform those internal audits that must be done throughout the city, department by department.
And Ms. Green, how would you ensure that ARPA funds are used for long-term impact rather than short-term fixes?
Well, one of the things I called for was a do-over back in the fall of the year, and certainly for the grants that was going north. And what that meant to me was to develop a level playing field so that the small businesses north would get a fair shot. You know, I visited several of them over the last several months. As a matter of fact, this past Sunday, I was told by one of the small businesses that I went into that they had received a 76 score, yet they have not received not one dime. And so we've got many stories like that, and what we want to do is to evaluate with the money that we have left, how can we touch and make the north side small businesses viable, touch them, because it's not going to take a lot, but it certainly will go a long way if the city can show that they have been able to give to as many small businesses that they can with the amounts that have been allotted for North St. Louis, touch and receive the dollars that have come on behalf of restoration from this terrible COVID that we all went through. The people have used their own monies to weather that storm, and the federal government sent in some relief. So I would love to see relief happen in those areas north as well as throughout the city. We've got to do it. We've got the time to make it right, not only in North St. Louis, but South and Central as well.
Ms. Behringer, how would you ensure ARPA funds are used for long-term impact rather than short-term fixes?
Well, I was dealing with the ARPA funds as we were deciding how to distribute them at the state level throughout the state of Missouri. And the one thing that was made very clear is that they had to be committed by December 31st of 2024, or the federal government would take them back. So the city had a task to get them committed. Unfortunately, a lot of the money didn't get committed until literally December of 2024. And I was made aware because I was out in the community and I was being told by people when I was out there that the ARPA funds that were committed to Northside, there was a business who had been there for 30 years that said they applied 3 times and got denied. They at that time had told me who was getting it and why. If I had been the comptroller at the time, I would have immediately gone to SLDC and I would have said, we need to reevaluate what we're doing right now. And I wanted to make sure that all the businesses were reviewed. I wouldn't have tried to stop it because I would have been afraid that we would not have had it committed and then we would have lost some of those funds. The next concern I have is people don't realize that just because they're committed does not mean we're guaranteed to keep them. So if we don't get them spent down, there's no doubt in my mind when they start looking at the ARPA funds in Washington, D.C., that they will actually start saying, okay, who's still sitting on their money? And if we're sitting on our money, I have a fear, and I have a very valid fear, that they will take the money back from us. And legally they can. So what we need to focus on with the ARPA funds is getting them spent. So if we get them spent, they can't take the money away. Now, if you're wondering about how do you make sure that they're used in the most impactful way, you need to make sure that there are deliverables. However, the ARPA funds came from different areas, and some areas, like the Department of Economic Development, already had in place certain requirements of the funds that would make sure that it was used in an impactful way. So there's different ways that ARPA was distributed, and it depends on who got the money and what it's being used for as to who's overseeing it. It could be the Department of Health for the state of Missouri. But I do know that they are monitoring the funds as well.
Ms. Behringer, how should the city use the RAM settlement funds, and what principles would guide your recommendations?
Well, I'm glad they put the RAM settlement money into a deposited so it would earn interest. So right now we know that even though nothing's being done with the money, it is earning interest. Because what should be the focus, as I've said before, are getting those ARPA funds spent. However, when you look at the RAM settlement money, what you have to look at is what is the best long-term investment? And then you have to look at who else can we help with that long-term investment? And what I mean by that is, I had said earlier that it's important to generate outside visitors into the city of St. Louis, whether it's convention, whether it's sports, so that they generate the money we need. So we need to be able to do what we need to do downtown. However, the north side also needs investment money. So what you have to look at is, by just giving a pot of money, well, let's say people would say, oh, 100 million, that's a lot of money. In developing an entire area, it's really not a whole lot of money. So how would you make the RAM's money into a way that could be a designated stream of revenue that could be benefited by North St. Louis to help rebuild North St. Louis? I don't have that exact answer right now. I've been looking into it. I think I've come up with an idea, but before I would ever want to release that to the public, I do exactly what I always do when I have a way to solve a problem. I will sit down with people and I'll find out, is it doable? Is it something people would want, and would it work? And so that is how I would be trying to figure this out. A designated stream of revenue to North St. Louis is key. And if we can figure out a way with those RAMS funds to do that, I think that's the best way. So there's always money flowing into North St. Louis.
Ms. Green, how should the city use the RAM settlement funds, and what principles would guide your recommendations?
I think that we have the RAMPS money is a one-time payment. It's earning interest. I think that we can look at matching dollars as a priority use. Downtown has said they would match dollar for dollar. I think that should be a priority, but I also think that you need to have a large portion of those dollars spent north. I believe that there is the priority of the folks that are in government now to spend north as well as downtown, to repair or renovate some of the downtown buildings. So you want to look at that, because that way you can stretch your dollars. Also, areas south and central could possibly use some infrastructure, but the principal area would be north when you're talking about rebirth, rebuilding. You want to make sure that you don't waste the money or trying to make promises with it north, because North St. Louis has waited long enough with promises for revenue streams and things like that. These are hard cash dollars that can be spent right now, and they need to have a high priority to be spent right now in North St. Louis. I mentioned, the small businesses that have been there, weathered the storm they suffered. So let's crack open the bank and let's spend those dollars north, because that's what it's all about. These are one-time funds. We want to see them benefit those who choose to live here, those who could go anywhere else and live, but they choose to live right here. And some of them are still living in North St. Louis. That's the same with the ARPA monies. I'll just mention that those are one-time dollars. dollars. And the reason I'm saying that, those are not budgeted dollars, those are one-time dollars. And so those are dollars that we have received, and we have an onus upon us as leaders to spend them in the best responsible manner to serve our citizens, so that we can see a real difference take place in our city. And that's what we need to do. And that doesn't take a whole lot of thought, but the challenge is to get the minds together to get it done.
Ms. Green, the airport is one of the city's largest assets. What role should the comptroller play in its financial oversight and development?
That's a good question. The comptroller has been there playing a strong, significant role at the airport. This airport is owned by the city. Governance from the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, Board of Aldermen, as well as the Airport Commission. The Airport Commission makes initial decisions that are then passed to City Hall to be further approved through Board of Aldermen sometimes, as well as the Board of Estimate and Apportionment. My role is significantly played when it comes to the financings, and we've had the great opportunity to finance some of the largest public works projects at the airport, starting out with building a runway. A runway that was $1 billion project in 1997 when we got the federal record of decision on that, and then we had a terminal plan to renovate the terminal, which was another $1 billion plan, but we got sidetracked with the tornado that went through in 2011 that caused us to have to rebuild using insurance. And so we did that, and now we're back, and over a 5 to 10 year period, we have researched until we come up with a new terminal plan, and that plan is to combine both Terminal 1 and 2 into one big terminal that would serve Southwest as our largest carrier. And so over the years, the comptroller has been there setting up funds that would serve to help buy down the cost to rent to the airlines, so that it'll make it attractive for airlines want to fly out of St. Louis. And that's why we have the largest and the busiest airport in the state, because, you know, just like the city's credit has gone up, the airport's credit has gone up as well. It has strong fiscal management over the years, and they can be proud of the fact that issuing the bonds to build out this $2.8 billion terminal project is going to bring construction jobs, and it's going to be a great future, bring a great future to our city.
Thank you. Ms. Behringer, the airport is one of the city's largest assets. What role should the comptroller play in its financial oversight and development?
Well, the comptroller does play a key role because they sit on the airport commission, and they should be present at all the meetings so they know what's going on. And that's important because we're getting ready to expand it. We're getting ready to have a large airport. And the importance of that is the fact that Fortune 500 companies are not going to consider St. Louis if we don't upgrade our airport, and we need to do it as quickly as possible. Because one thing I tell people is St. Louis we have the river, we have the trains, and we have the airport. And the reason I know that's important, not just for transportation, is because I sat on the transportation committee for the city of St. Louis, where all of the comptroller would come, the deputy comptroller would come to the meetings, and we would vote on the bonding, we would vote on the expansion. But the other thing about the airport is that Kansas City itself also just did a complete upgrade of their airport, and they had the help of Jefferson City in the financing. And that's key, because I was in Jefferson City when that was all being in the works. I know the senator that was able to put that package together, because we are not going to have to charge our city residents for this brand new airport, but rather we're going to have different entities come together, one being the state and the airlines, and doing the bonding, and then we will get a state-of-the-art airport. So I will definitely be talking to Jefferson City, using the relationships I have in Jefferson City to help get more money for the city of St. Louis for our airport.
Hello, I'm Taylor Harris with Fox 2 News, and we are back with this Comptroller candidate forum hosted by iHeart. And let's close by discussing equity, monetization, and community engagement. Plus, we'll finish with a few rapid fire questions to help voters learn more about your leadership style as well. First, we will have Ms. Behringer. How can the comptroller ensure that Black-owned and minority-owned businesses are paid promptly and equitably?
Well, what I know from my experience is that sometimes your minority-owned businesses are very small. And when they're small, that means not only are they doing the work, but they're doing the accounting and they're trying to follow guidelines and they're trying to get through the paperwork of government. So what I would want to do first is make sure there was a way we could maybe like pre-screen these minority-owned businesses. I know they already go through different screening, but when we're talking about invoicing, they may not have the accounting services that they need to get where they need to get. So if we have them pre-set up, that when they do put in their invoices, it would be a much smoother, easier process. At the same time, I would want to make sure that there was something out there, and I think there already is through the nonprofits, where they help businesses, small businesses, minority-owned businesses with setting up these processes so that they don't fall behind, because they're usually a small business and they have so many other things on their plate. But the other thing is that I believe in getting out into the community. I would want to speak to the business owners. I would want to go to the Black Chamber of Commerce. I would want to engage and find out what are your hurdles? How can I help you? Because that's why I'm here. Because I want everyone who works with the city of St. Louis to succeed. And I want everyone to have the opportunity, that's a minority or small business, to have the opportunity to even have a contract with the city. They may not even know how to apply for a contract. So that's part of that whole process. But I'm pretty sure there's already a nonprofit that does that work. And I would want to find out how I could help in that with that nonprofit. And if there isn't a nonprofit, then I would definitely want to find out how we could start one that would help with that.
Ms. Green, how can the comptroller ensure that Black-owned and minority-owned businesses are paid promptly and equitably?
In my tenure, we have I created what we call quick pay. That was in the 90s. Quick pay at the airport. When we had the large airport runway project, we had primes who had minority subcontractors, and what we did, we sent letters to those minority contractors during the time of payment, and we would let that minority contractor know that we have sent a check to the prime, and if the prime had not paid that subcontractor, then let us know. That way that it would cut out the delays of a subcontractor being paid. Minority businesses sometimes go out of business because the prime is not paying them. And so that's what we did in the 90s. Since then, we have had occasion where we have two separate contracts, one where there's a prime contract, and then that subcontractor to that prime is separately contracted, so that those checks go out at the same time, so that we do not have the problems of the prime being paid and the subcontractors are not being paid. We also want to increase the number of minority contractors, and we can do that if we can build relationship with banks so that those banks are giving lines of credit to minority contractors. That's what's needed, so that they can have enough line of credit so that they can make sure that they can stay in business, and if there's any delays in their invoicing or whatever problems they may have, that line of credit is going to see them through and make sure that their employees are being paid.
Ms. Green, would you commit to publishing financial dashboards or quarterly reports to help residents monitor city spending in real time?
Oh, absolutely. We do have reports that we publish, excuse me, and those certainly can be, we do post some of the quarterly reports that we, from the budget standpoint, that is. We also have annual reports that are posted annually. We also post every single audit that's done. Is posted as soon as it is a final audit. All of the internal audits. We also have the state audits that are done by the states that are posted on our online, so that the people can look at how the city is faring in terms of the state audit of the comptroller's office of the city and what have you. Every single year, the mayor is charged with ordering an independent audit over the city, and of course that is posted as well. So we are good at posting all of the different audits, so whether it's an internal audit that's performed over a department from the comptroller's office, or if it's the annual audit that is performed as a request of the mayor. That's a charter function, and that shows the separation of duties. That shows the checks and balances of having the Board of Estimate and Apportionment to have three strong independent leaders that check and balance, and that's what we need to continue in the city. Thank you.
Ms. Behringer, would you commit to publishing financial dashboards or quarterly reports to help residents monitor city spending in real time?
Absolutely. I'm all about transparency. That's how we let the taxpayers hold us accountable. And I have tried, and it's not just the comptroller's office whose website is behind. There's many areas of the city of St. Louis where you try to go in and you try to get some information and it's not available. And it's not necessarily always because it's nefarious, someone's trying to hide it. It's rather sometimes they don't get it up in a timely manner, or the systems have shut down because there's too many people on them. But at the end of the day, I think transparency, portals, giving all your reports out, lets people know, here it is. This is our city. This is what we're dealing with. And then they don't have to think that you're hiding anything, or that there's something going on that they're not made aware of. It also helps. Also, the other thing that I have found is that I've been told that a lot of times journalists have to sunshine the city to get anything. So that's the other reason we need to put everything out there on a portal, so there's no one saying, well, you're hiding something, just because they can't get it unless they sunshine.
Ms. Behringer, do you support participatory budgeting, and what role could the comptroller play in ensuring its success?
The city of St. Louis has done the participatory budgeting. The only thing I would hesitate on is making sure it doesn't stop the timely manner the budget is due. It has to be done by June 31st. And so I would want to make sure that whoever's putting those meetings together, make sure they know that this is our time frame. We have to make sure we get everything out there. And then there are certain things, you have infrastructure that has to be paid. There's wants and needs. So they'd see that here are the things that have to be spent for these reasons. But then the other part that I'd like to see more is that each of the aldermen gets a pot of money for their ward, and they get to decide where it's spent. And so I think that part would be extremely helpful to the general public, so they could see where their alderman has decided to spend that money each year. So from that perspective, absolutely.
Ms. Green, do you support participatory budgeting, and what role could the comptroller play in ensuring its success?
Well, we have practiced participatory budgeting through the capital fund since the very beginning. In 1995, when I started as the budget director, and we would pull together the community from all of the neighborhoods in the community and ask them what's needed. And they came back with the top priorities, and we had a $500 million budget to start, and that budget continues to grow. And each and every year, we are asked to ask the community, tell us what it is that you need in your community. In those days, it was lighting. We wanted to light up every four corners of all the schools. And we wanted to make sure all of our parks are lit. We want to make sure that the lighting on all main thoroughfares was more lit than those throughout the other streets. And so those were the top priorities in those days. And then, of course, you want to make sure that there are lightings in and around all of your sports venues where you have your public coming and going, and all around your supermarkets and all those kind of things where in your neighborhood you're walking, you're coming off of public transportation, and you are actively living and working in the city of St. Louis. So the neighborhoods, residents, whether you're in an apartment, whether you're in a home, you have the right to participate in letting the government know how to budget. And that's annually. Every single year we do that in terms of the capital budget. And in terms of the capital budget for aldermen, they have every single year $600,000. During the time Ms. Behringer was there, that amount was $300,000 to spend how they wanted to spend in their ward. And so that hasn't stopped, and the aldermen make those decisions on behalf of what the citizens in their wards tell them. You sometimes it's replacing dumpsters, sometimes it's paving alleys, and sometimes it's doing some sidewalks. As a matter of fact, there's another pot of money for sidewalks. There's another pot of money for trees. And there has been an increasing number of dollars become available lately to fund even some repair on some of the homes in the neighborhoods. So it's up to those aldermen in the wards to determine how to spend those dollars as the residents see fit.
Thank you. Next, we'll move to our next segment, the rapid fire questions, and you'll have a few, seconds to respond. Should the city ever take on new debt? This goes to Ms. Behringer.
Well, only if you can service the debt. So you have to be careful what the debt is for. So that I would have to know what debt we're talking about. But you have to be able to service your debt. And if you can't service your debt, it's going to hurt your credit rating.
Okay. Ms. Green.
You take on new debt on a regular basis for fire equipment, police equipment, and there's a regular plan of action, a regular process, and you have to understand the needs of our working public safety workers as to what their needs are. So there's been no tax increase, issuance of debt over the years, and we continue to do that to make sure we have the type of state-of-the-art equipment for our police and fire and other public service employees.
What is one department that needs stronger physical oversight, Ms. Green?
I think it's SLDC just in the moment, and that's because that we have the ARPA funds, and in this moment in time, we need to have a little stronger oversight as well. Not only the Northside grants, but the $200 million that has been allocated in that area.
Ms. Behringer, what is one department that needs stronger physical oversight?
Well, I agree. It's SLDC. However, which is the St. Louis Development Corporation. It's a quasi part of city government, but yet it's not city government. It was set up to be a place to be able to do a lot of development with not a whole lot of government oversight. However, the Comptroller's office has the ability to audit the SLDC, and I would definitely want to make sure that I was looking into their finances. And once again, I think it's because they've got too much money, and not because, once again, they're not being nefarious. They're overwhelmed, and we have to make sure this money is being spent in the manner it was intended to.
Right. Ms. Behringer, what is one word to describe your financial philosophy?
One word?
One word.
Oh. Conservative.
Okay. Ms. Green?
Conservative.
Okay. Ms. Green, would you say no to the mayor if necessary?
Absolutely. Again, we are 3 independent elected officials that bring about the checks and balances, and I believe it's on behalf of the citizens that I would say no until we are able to come to a place where we're in agreement on behalf of the citizens.
Ms. Behringer, would you say no to the mayor if necessary?
I would say no to anyone if necessary, but at the end of the day, if it's going to be something that I feel would be bad for the city of St. Louis, I'd want to make sure that we figure out a better way to do it if it's going to help the city. But if it's bad for the citizens, I would have to say no and figure out a better approach.
Well, I would like to thank both of you ladies for joining us, Ms. Darlene Green and also Ms. Donna Behringer, for your thoughtful responses and dedication to physical responsibility. This forum was brought to you by iHeartMedia. To our listeners, Election Day is approaching. Make sure that your voice counts.